In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So first, I just want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you for being so welcoming to me and my family as we have moved here. It's been a true joy getting to know all of you, and I know there's many more of you to meet. Patty, Lyric, August, Acorn, and I all feel so blessed to be here. So this Sunday, as much as I would like to share a message with all of you about our amazing connection to all the other species of this planet, being my first Sunday, I feel it is more appropriate for me to share a message with all of you about the ministry that Patty and I did in our previous context in Port Jervis, New York. In August of 2015, 4 years ago, Patty and I moved to New York. We came to Port Jervis because when we filled out our placement paperwork the last few weeks of seminary, Patty and I checked the box which said, "Willing to go anywhere." Then at a special evening service, each of my classmates, they received envelopes that told us where we'd be serving for our first call. After finding out that 90% of my classmates were called to Ohio or neighboring states, Patty and I opened an envelope that said, "You have been called to the Northeast." Then, much to our surprise, we found that we were called to the Metropolitan New York Synod, to a city called Port Jervis, a place we had never heard of before, let alone seen. So, we put our faith in the bishops and the synod offices that they knew what they were doing and trusted that God was sending us there. I remember looking on Google Maps at what is now called the Watershed Park in Port Jervis, that is now over 35 miles of newly developed hiking and biking trails, and seeing that it was literally my backyard. In that moment, I could tell that God was at work with this plan. Then when I found out I could take the train, I could walk out my front door, walk to the train, and take that into Manhattan, I knew God was orchestrating all of this. So on September 28th, 2015, I was ordained and installed by the Bishop Robert Rimbaud at St. Peter's Lutheran Church. And once Patty and I began to settle into what I felt like was the promised land, I was shocked to hear that its local inhabitants did not feel the same. It started with the people that I met on the streets, voicing to me all the problems of Port Jervis, or visitors making it clear they would never spend even a night in Port Jervis. You see, Port had seen some tough times economically and socially, being the farthest stop on the train line with a commute of almost 2 hours into the city, and being the city that once housed all the canal workers and then all the train workers, Port Jervis had now come on some tough times. There just seemed to be so much negativity, and that negativity found its way right into the church I was serving. I'll never forget the conversation I had with a member of the congregation on the night of my ordination. They told me, either bring this church back to life or burn it to the ground. And it didn't stop there. It went all the way up to the synodical level. I would go to pastor's retreat where more time was spent complaining at the bishop than taking time for anything else. On these retreats, I was even pulled into secret meetings behind closed doors where pastors would plot and complain against their synodical leaders. Now, I could have got lost down a wormhole of negativity and worry for the whole time I was there, but instead, I chose faith in the unseen over death. And this all started with a miracle that happened when I was first called to Port Jervis. And that miracle's name is Veronica Embriano. She was the first baby that I baptized in a church, and Veronica was exactly as I said, a miracle. Greg and Tina, her parents, had been told that it was impossible for them to have a child. And when Tina went to the doctor with stomach pains, the doctor said, "Go home, take some stomach medicine." Well, that pain was actually a child, and it wasn't until just a few weeks before Veronica was born that Greg and Tina were amazed to find out, just like Abraham and Sarah, that they were about to have a child. Now, as Lyra can tell you, Veronica is one of her best friends, and her miraculous birth changed my life. She taught me not to get lost in the worry of wishing things could be the way you wish they could be, but rather to be thankful for the unexpected miracles God brings us. The miracle of Veronica is God saying, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, or what you will wear, for it is God's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. So do not be afraid. It is God's good pleasure to give all of us, all of you, the kingdom. And if your treasure is in miracles, then your heart will be there also. You see, you will never see a miracle if you keep wishing things could be the way you wish they could be. Because miracles are, by definition, a surprising and welcome event that cannot be defined by natural or scientific laws and is therefore considered to be work of a divine agency. Miracles are a surprise. They are not planned or plotted out. Miracles come from saying yes to the unseen. And that is exactly what I've learned to do for my ministry in New York. I have learned to say yes to the unseen, which has allowed me to see miracles. Shortly after we moved to New York, I heard there was a church called El Bethel International, whose pastors are from India, and they were looking for a church that they could use space to worship at. So when they asked me, I did what any new pastor would do. I asked for advice. So since I had no counsel when I started at St. Peter's, I turned to the synod, and I asked, what should I do? They suggested that I say no to having them use our space because it might be a distraction to my ministry, and it might even possibly confuse people. So I thought about it, but I just couldn't see how that would be true, and felt that if someone came to me, a pastor, looking for a home, that the Bible would tell me that hospitality in many ways comes before all else. So I made an important decision, and I went against the advice of my advisors in the synod, and I said yes. Now, El Bethel worships at St. Peter's every Sunday afternoon, and they are some of the most wonderful, prayerful, kind people I know. And after that, saying yes became my mantra for the 4 years that I was in Port Jervis. I decided that if someone wanted to use our space or had an idea that they wanted to try, as long as it was legal and safe, I would say yes. Then, shortly after that, Diane Donahue introduced me to Leah, who was studying Buddhism. And Leah asked if she could use this church to meditate. So, of course, I said yes. Now, if you bop by St. Peter's on a Tuesday evening, there's a good chance that there will be a small group of people meditating upstairs, bringing good thoughts, prayers, and blessings into the church. Next, Kathy Brink, our music director, took me to a meeting at Empowering Port Jervis, a local nonprofit, and everyone was so excited to see a clergy person there. So at the meeting, being new to the area, I decided to ask the question, what does this community need? And the resounding reply was, we need an interfaith council. The group asked if I would work on reforming one, so what did I say? I said yes. So I made it my mission to see that it was so. And that turned into a council that now runs a warming station for those experiencing homelessness, among other things. In fact, another thing I said yes to was the warming station itself. Now, originally in the winter of 2016, the Interfaith Council's warming station was supposed to be held at the Reformed Church, but the building didn't pass inspection. So if I remember correctly, one evening, a week before the station was to open, when I was horribly sick with a cold, Zach Pierce, my co-director at the Interfaith Council, called me and asked if St. Peter's would host the station. I remember thinking about it for a while and said I'd call him back. I thought, okay, I should call a special congregational meeting to talk about this and debate the pros and cons. But you already know what I did. What did I say? Yes. Now, in many ways, that station has become the glue that holds the people of St. Peter's together in common mission, along with members of all the other community religious organizations. Then, in the spring of 2017, Jill approached me someone from the community with a dream. She told me that she had approached the city about creating a community garden on an empty lot, but the city had turned her down. Well, it just so happened St. Peter's had an empty lot, so I told her yes. And if she would like to use it to create a community garden, it was hers to use. So you know what she said? Yes. Now that garden, which is called the Tri-State Unity Garden, just had a ribbon cutting where the mayor was present with members of the city council. And all of that to say it is a growing, huge miracle of a garden in the city. And it didn't stop there. Patty and I said yes to others, like Martha, when she came to us with the amazing ideas to hand out reusable bags at a grocery store free of charge as an outreach to educate people about plastic bags. And all of these miracles would not have been possible without the support I had from Reverend Lamont Wells and Brandon Dupree in the Synod office. Without them, I would not have been as free as I was to say yes and see the miracles occur. And as you might have already noticed, I was not the only one saying yes to the unseen. Patty and I said yes together to over 35 cultural exchange travelers that said yes to living in our home. We hosted people from Mexico, China, Taiwan, Israel, Germany, France, and more. And many of them, like Pablo, Maria, Zoe, and Jason, are now more like family than friends. Patty also said yes to Gay when Gay approached her and asked if she would host a women's march at St. Peter's. Patty said yes, thinking it would just be the two of them. But much to our surprise, a miracle happened that day, and our church saw over 800 people come through its doors, which led to 2 more very successful marches. Patty also said yes to hosting a climate march, starting a men's group, a breastfeeding class, hosting Safe Homes of Orange County, and more. Patty also said yes when Nolene Tomasi asked if she would put on a production of the Vagina Monologues at our church, which led to a sold-out show, and then to the Laramie Project the following year with a full cast, many of them who later became members of St. Peter's. She also said yes to the Tomasi's when Nolene's husband, Peter, asked if she would organize a rally for our local train station to become ADA accessible. She did, and out of those rallies for Access for All, MTA pledged $4 million to our local train station for it to become accessible. And for all that work that Patty did in social justice, in 2018, Patty received the Orange County Human Rights Award, which we received together with Lyric in our hands. And how did she get that award? How did she become an activist? It's all because of the simple words she said to Gay. It's all because she was willing to say yes. And you see, here's the crazy thing about saying yes to the unseen. When you start saying yes to everyone and everything, then you start to see your own dreams come true. Remember, it's God's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. My dream has always been to see solar panels put on a church, as it was my senior project in high school and in college. And by saying yes to a delight, I hear that too, okay, good. To a delightful man I met at the Interfaith Council meeting, I got to see that dream become a reality at St. Peter's. When he heard that I was interested in solar and that I would propose it to the congregation, he took out his checkbook and wrote a check and said, "This should get you started. If you get the congregation to pledge half, I'll do the rest." Free of charge, he also changed every light bulb in the church to LED, along with every light bulb in the parsonage. He also donated an electric mower, which they now use for all of the lawns around the buildings. So I would have to say by far that St. Peter's is the greenest church in Port Jervis, if not the greenest church in New York. And Patty and I said yes to many other people as well, like Kate, who was looking for a space to do yoga. We showed her our newly opened upstairs space, and she transformed it into a yoga studio. Now Kate is not only an important fixture of the church through yoga, but she is also one of our best friends and is now the administrative assistant at St. Peter's. Now, I'm not done yet. We did a lot over the past 4 years, and I would like to share it all with you. Of course, I don't have time to share it all. But some of the other things we did was other people started to say yes, too. In the summer of 2018, Kathy, Kurt, Melissa, Heidi, and Travis, some members of the church and some not, said yes to accepting a grant of $10,000 to send us to Houston, Texas, where we went to the Evangelical Lutheran Church youth gathering to promote One River Mission Retreat Center that we created in Port Jervis. By them saying yes, Port Jervis is now a place on the map for most of the 35,000 Lutheran youth who visited our drum circle at the youth gathering. And now our retreat center that's in New York has hosted 2 amazing groups, one from Ohio and one from Minnesota, with over 70 different people staying at the church. And so many other people said yes simply by being there and walking with us, like Ty Kreck, who's a local contractor and an outspoken atheist who believed in the mission of the church. So he would go above and beyond to jump and fix anything that went wrong. Or Mike Ward, who is a retired lighting designer from Broadway. He installed and donated retired Broadway lights into St. Peter's, into the sanctuary. Even those who just walked by coming to church, like the Belchers, our local Republican councilman and his wife, who would be there every week and at every event, at every service. They supported us no matter what we said yes to. So did Kathy Kraus, Kathy Williams, Lee, Mark, Susan, Kevin. I could go on and on and on. All of them, perhaps not at first, but over time, were willing to say yes to the unseen. And not only was it members of St. Peter's who said yes, but members of the First Presbyterian Church and the Reformed Church said yes to working together and experience what we call churches learning change. Now, through that program, those 3 congregations worship together every Sunday morning. And by them saying yes to working ecumenically, Reverend Ann, Zach Pierce, and myself received the Excellence in Ecumenism Award for the New York State Council of Churches this past May. I left St. Peter's to come here not because of failure, but because of the success of that community being willing to say yes. The congregation of St. Peter's has come so far from living a life of fear to living a life, as one member of the church would say, a life of abundance. And as a congregation, they said yes to not giving up and to allowing old ways of doing things die to allow new ones to take root. Perhaps one of the biggest things that Patty and I said yes to was when Leilani approached us about renting space at the church for a foster care agency. Leilani had a hard time finding a church to host her because Berkshire Farms, the foster care agency, allows people who are LGBTQIA+, or in other words, gay, become foster parents. So many churches would not host them. Now, St. Peter's was proud to be welcoming and affirming, and I was met by a rainbow flag outside the front doors when I first started there. So when she asked if she could use the church, what do you think I said? Now, not only had there been numerous families in Port Jervis who have become foster parents, but Berkshire Farms has become so successful that they now have their own offices in Port Jervis, and their whole family have become members of the church. Now, I want you all to think back with me for just a moment to the kids that were up here during our children's message. Those kids, they are our future. May they all remind you to say yes before you say no. Remember to have faith just like Jesus did, to have faith in what is unseen. That is what we call hope. And what I leave with you today is a memory of someone I will never forget. Lynn Hessleitner was one of the kindest, most welcoming people I have ever met. She taught me how to show hospitality. She supported me because I was the pastor. There was nothing more I had to do than just be me when I was around her. And the day that she died, I rushed over to her house to meet with her family. And when Gray Parker Funeral Home came in to take the body and suggested that the family leave, do you know what they said? They said no. And I think the reason they said no is because they knew that their mother would have never left them. So what did I do? For the first time, I said no. I stayed and I watched them remove the body. And in that moment, I learned that the one time that you say no is when it comes to breaking up community. So through this process of redevelopment that will be messy, that will be hard, I will mess up. We will all mess up. We will make mistakes and learn from them. We will try new things out and find that they don't work. But if we don't say yes to change, then we will never see miracles. Remember, do not worry about your life. Strive for God's kingdom. So let's stick together through this process and say yes to the unseen, just as Lynn would want us to. Amen.
Sing the song of the day.